Welcome to Colonize the Ocean podcast, where we discuss oceanic colonization, exploration, and education with your hosts Adam Jewell and Brendan Traxler.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into the most compelling ideas and surprising facts shaping our world. Today we're pulling back the curtain on a hidden truth about our digital lives. Think about it. You're streaming your favorite shows, you're relying on cloud computing for work, maybe you're interacting with powerful AI models, well, pretty much every single day. But have you ever truly considered the massive, often unseen, environmental footprint required to power all of that?
Yeah, it's kind of invisible, isn't it?
Totally. And it's not just about the electricity that keeps the servers humming. It's also about a startlingly vast and often overlooked resource, water.
Mm-hmm. Gallons and gallons of it.
We're talking about the silent, invisible thirst of our digital world. Okay, let's unpack this a bit. We're talking about the actual physical backbone of our entire digital existence. You know, those colossal server farms.
The warehouse is full of computers, basically.
Exactly. Powering our artificial intelligence, handling our endless data storage, enabling all our digital interactions. These facilities are guzzling resources at an astonishing rate. An ever-increasing rate, actually.
It's exponential, really.
But what if the solution to their insatiable thirst and their relentless heat problem was staring us in the face? Maybe hidden in plain sight, or rather, in the deepest, wettest place on Earth.
You mean?
What if we just dunk them in the ocean?
Right. It sounds pretty wild.
It sounds like something out of a futuristic movie, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's not. It's actually happening right now.
Yeah. What's truly fascinating here is seeing how cutting-edge innovation is responding directly to, well, a critical looming resource challenge. Data centers are absolutely foundational to our modern digital economy. They're like the silent, tireless workhorses behind every email you send, every search query.
Every cat video you watch.
Right. Every complex AI calculation, every financial transaction, every single piece of content you consume online, it all runs through them. And their environmental footprint, particularly in terms of energy and, as you said, water, it's just growing exponentially with our increasing reliance on these technologies.
It has to, right? More data, more power needed.
Exactly. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, the global search for genuinely sustainable cooling solutions is becoming paramount. It's not just a matter of efficiency anymore. It's almost a matter of, well, planetary stewardship. And the ocean, with its vast cold depths, is indeed presenting itself as this powerful natural solution. It could fundamentally redefine how we think about digital infrastructure and its environmental impact.
And that's exactly what we're here to explore today. In this deep dive, we'll take you on a journey to understand why these data centers are such resource hogs.
And it is hogs, plural. Big ones.
Big ones indeed. And how this, let's be honest, audacious idea of submerging them in the sea directly tackles these critical issues. We'll look at the trailblazing efforts happening, particularly by countries like China, but also building upon the pioneering research done by companies like Microsoft years ago.
That Microsoft project was really key, wasn't it?
Absolutely foundational. But crucially, we'll also confront the important questions we absolutely need to ask about the potential environmental consequences.
The ecological side.
And the security implications of this deep sea revolution. Because putting critical infrastructure underwater raises some new questions.
Definitely some new challenges there.
So get ready for some truly surprising facts that might just make you rethink the very ground, or I guess lack thereof, beneath your digital existence.
All right, let's start by shining a spotlight on something most of us, myself included sometimes, rarely consider. The sheer colossal scale of energy, and maybe more surprisingly, water consumed by the physical infrastructure underpinning our digital world.
It's easy to forget it's physical at all, isn't it?
Yeah.
It feels like the cloud is just up there.
Exactly. It's easy to take for granted that every email you send, every search query you type, every complex AI model you interact with, every single movie you stream in high definition.
Or even standard def, really.
Right. All of it requires massive physical servers to be working nonstop, 247 year-round. These sprawling data centers, often housed in these very unassuming windowless buildings you might drive past.
You wouldn't even know what's inside. Nope. They are the unseen energy guzzlers. And, maybe more critically, the water devourers behind our digital age.
Indeed. And the digital economy's reliance on these facilities isn't just staggering, it's accelerating at an unprecedented rate. Think about it. Businesses across the globe are automating, they're digitalizing their operations, integrating AI into, well, pretty much every facet of their work.
And that means more computing power needed.
Precisely. The demand for computing power escalates geometrically. This directly translates into a need for more and more data centers, each one generally larger and more powerful than the last. Our source material highlights this perfectly, describing how these massive collections of servers, packed into what are essentially industrial-scale warehouses, gobble up growing amounts of energy. No surprise there, perhaps.
We kind of expect the energy part.
Right. But crucially, they also cycle through hundreds of thousands of gallons of water a day, just to carry away the immense heat they generate.
Hundreds of thousands of gallons a day.
Per data center, potentially. For the larger ones, yes. To put that into perspective, a single large data center can use as much water as a small city, often drawing from local municipal supplies or even directly from natural sources like rivers or aquifers.
Wow. So it's not just a minor operational cost.
Oh, not at all. It's a significant and, increasingly unsustainable drain on two of our planet's most vital and often scarce resources.
Yeah.
Energy and fresh water.
And the heat they generate, that brings us directly to what's called the cooling conundrum. Because it's not trivial heat, is it?
Not at all. When you have thousands upon thousands of powerful processors and servers packed tightly together, working nonstop at peak capacity, they generate an enormous amount of waste heat.
Like your laptop getting hot, but on a massive scale.
Exactly. Think of that, or the back of your refrigerator, and then multiply that heat output by, well, thousands or even millions of components crammed together. And this heat isn't just an inconvenience, it's a destructive force. Excessive heat can severely damage the sensitive electronic equipment inside.
Leading to what? System failures.
System failures, costly downtime, and potentially even the complete irreversible destruction of valuable data. Nobody wants that.
Absolutely not. So keeping these servers operating within a very specific, quite narrow temperature range isn't just a nice to have. It's an absolute non-negotiable necessity for the integrity of our digital world.
Precisely. And the need for constant, rigorous cooling is so fundamental to a data center's operation that, get this, roughly 40%, 0% of an ordinary land-based data center's total electricity consumption is dedicated solely to cooling.
40%, just for cooling.
Just for cooling. Nearly half of their entire energy budget simply battling the heat generated by the IT equipment itself.
That's huge. So how do they normally do it, the traditional cooling methods?
Well, they typically involve quite an elaborate process. They often chill vast quantities of water, which is then circulated through heat exchangers, kind of like a car radiator system, or sometimes it's sprayed into the air on the servers. That's called evaporative cooling.
Like a swan cooler effect.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. It uses the evaporation of water to lower the air temperature. But either way, this process requires a constant fresh supply of water, which, as we said, can be drawn from underground aquifers, rivers, streams, or sometimes, if available, reclaimed wastewater.
And I assume the machinery to do all that chilling and pumping uses a lot of energy too.
Oh, absolutely. The energy intensity of the chillers and pumps involved in these systems is also considerable. It adds another significant layer to their overall environmental footprint, beyond just the water consumption itself. And, if we connect this to the bigger picture, these colossal cooling demands mean that data centers are increasingly competing for water, a resource that is directly linked to human survival.
Competing with what? Farming, drinking water.
All of the above. We're talking about direct competition with agriculture, which feeds billions, with other industrial processes, and yes, most critically, with daily drinking water for populations around the world. And what's particularly striking, maybe even a critical paradox here, as revealed by an investigation from Source Material and The Guardian.
Well, what did they find?
They found that many tech companies, often driven by operational efficiencies like wanting low humidity, ironically choose to site their massive data centers in some of the driest regions globally.
Dry regions, why there?
Because the naturally dry air reduces the risk of equipment damage from humidity and corrosion. So places like Arizona in the US, parts of Spain, the Middle East, they're actually quite popular for data centers.
But that seems counterintuitive if they need so much water for cooling.
Exactly. This seemingly practical choice only exacerbates the water stress in regions already struggling with severe scarcity. Imagine an agricultural community or just a regular town facing water restrictions partly because a nearby data center, maybe servicing users thousands of miles away, needs that water to cool its servers.
Wow, that's a profound illustration of the hidden costs, isn't it? The hidden competition for resources.
It really is.
So, okay, it's not just a matter of keeping the lights on for these digital brains. It's about keeping them from literally melting down.
Yeah.
And that fight against heat is creating this silent, invisible competition for one of our most precious finite resources, fresh water.
And it feels like a truly unsustainable path, especially for an industry that is only growing. And you layer on AI development.
Which needs even more compute power.
Exactly. AI is predicted to push these demands even higher, potentially dramatically so.
Right. So this is where it gets really interesting and maybe, like you said, a little audacious, because some truly innovative minds are now looking to the one place on Earth that has an almost infinite abundance of cool water to solve this exact problem. Okay, so faced with this massive cooling conundrum, this unsustainable thirst for fresh water, this radical new idea emerges. What if we start trying to fight against nature, bringing water to dry places, and instead work with nature?
Use what's already there, right?
Precisely. This brings us to the core concept, harnessing the ocean's immense natural chill. Instead of building these elaborate energy-intensive cooling systems on land and evaporating precious fresh water, maybe often in arid regions.
Innovators are now strategically placing data centers in literally the wettest place there is, the ocean.
Yeah, dunking them right in.
Pretty much. And this represents a fundamental, almost poetic shift in thinking, doesn't it? Rather than building ever more complex and energy-guzzling cooling towers on land.
Which consume vast quantities of water and power.
The approach now is to leverage the ocean's inherent cooling power directly. And the mechanism, well, it's actually elegantly simple, conceptually at least, yet potentially incredibly effective.
How does it work practically? Are the servers just wet?
No, definitely not. That would be disastrous. These undersea data centers are housed in these sealed, very robust capsules or pods. Think maybe like a submarine hull or a specialized container.
Okay, sealed tight.
Very tight. Inside, there's a system of pipes. Cold seawater from the surrounding environment is pumped through these pipes, which run through a radiator or heat exchanger located right on the back of the server racks.
Like a car radiator, but using seawater.
Exactly like that. The circulating seawater absorbs the intense heat generated by the servers, and then the slightly warmed water is pumped out and dissipates back into the vastness of the ocean.
And critically.
Critically, and this is a point people often misunderstand, the seawater never makes direct contact with the sensitive electronics. It's a closed-loop heat exchange system.
So the electronics stay dry and safe, protected from corrosion.
Absolutely. Protected from corrosion while still benefiting from this continuous, natural, and highly efficient cooling cycle provided by the surrounding cold water. And this completely bypasses the need for those massive water-guzzling cooling towers or environmentally harmful refrigerant chemicals used in some traditional systems.
That makes sense. Now, you mentioned this concept isn't entirely brand new. There was a pioneer.
That's right. The tech giant Microsoft, actually. Over a decade ago, they launched a really ambitious and, frankly, visionary project called Project Natick.
Natick, okay. What did they do?
They took a standard shipping container-sized capsule, packed it with over 800 servers, a decent amount of compute power, and in 2018, they sank it 117 feet deep off the coast of the Orkney Islands, north of Scotland.
Off Scotland. Why there? Cold water.
Cold water, definitely. Also, interestingly, near a major renewable energy source, the European Marine Energy Center, it was a bold, multi-million-dollar experiment to see if this, well, kind of wild idea of a subsea data center could actually work reliably beyond just theory.
Did it work? What did they find out after they pulled it back up?
Well, the findings from Microsoft's 2-year experiment were pretty remarkable. They went well beyond just proving the basic concept. After retrieving the pod, analyzing the data and the hardware, Microsoft concluded definitively the underwater data centers are reliable, practical, and use energy sustainably.
Reliable, practical, sustainable. That's a strong endorsement.
It really is. But beyond just validating the core idea, the experiment yielded some unexpected and incredibly valuable benefits, things they didn't necessarily anticipate.
Like what?
Well, they found a significantly lower failure rate for the servers inside the underwater pod. an astonishing 8 times fewer broken servers compared to equivalent land-based data centers operating in similar conditions.
8 times fewer failures. Why?
It was attributed to several critical factors, mostly linked to the environment inside the sealed pod. Firstly, the vessel was completely sealed, which meant it was free from atmospheric oxygen, which is actually quite corrosive to electronics over time.
Ah, rust and oxidation.
Exactly. It was also free from the humidity fluctuations that often plague land-based server rooms. Instead of air, the pod was filled with inert nitrogen gas, which is much less corrosive.
Okay, so a better atmosphere. What else?
Additionally, the sealed environment meant absolutely no human contact or movements inside. Think about it. No technicians accidentally bumping into equipment during maintenance.
Or kicking a cable.
Right. No dust getting into fans, no vibrations from nearby activity. All of those things can often cause accidental damage or dislodgements in traditional data centers, which are, visited and worked in constantly. This stable, controlled, human-free environment proved to be a massive boon for hardware longevity.
Think about that. Less corrosion from oxygen and humidity. No accidental bumps from technicians needing to perform maintenance, consistent pressure, a perpetually cool environment. It's like putting your computer in this perfect, sealed, pristine time capsule, far from all the everyday hazards and corrosive elements.
Pretty much, yeah. Far from dust, far from human error.
What an incredible discovery. It sort of fundamentally alters our understanding of not just how to cool servers efficiently, but maybe how to enhance their reliability and lifespan, too.
It really does suggest a new paradigm for server environments. And these operational benefits, particularly the natural cooling effect, they directly translate into significant energy savings. Which brings us back to that 40% cooling figure.
Oh, right. If you don't need massive chillers.
Exactly. Companies like Hailanyun, that's the company driving China's current projects, they claim their underwater data centers use at least 30% less electricity than on-land data centers. And that's largely thanks to this inherent natural cooling provided by the seawater.
30% less electricity overall. That's substantial.
It's very substantial, not just in operating costs, which are obviously huge for data centers, but also in the overall environmental impact, the carbon footprint. And this raises an important question for us, doesn't it? If we know that roughly 40% of an ordinary data center's electricity use goes solely towards cooling, then a 30% reduction in overall energy use, largely driven by eliminating much of that cooling load, represents an enormous step forward, a huge leap towards developing truly low-carbon digital infrastructure.
It's tackling the biggest energy hog within the data center.
Precisely. It's not merely about saving water, which is critical in itself, but it's also about significantly lowering the overall energy footprint and, by extension, the carbon emissions associated with our digital lives. It's a profound testament to the power of, well, you could call it biomimicry, or maybe just smart engineering leveraging natural systems.
Using the ocean as a giant heat sink.
Effectively, yes.
Yeah.
Harnessing a vast natural system to solve complex technological challenges. It really demonstrates the immense potential of the ocean as a partner in sustainable computing, transforming a natural resource into a core element of green tech.
Okay, so Microsoft did the groundbreaking research with Project Natick. They proved the concept works. It's reliable. It saves energy. Servers last longer. But then what? It seems like China is the one really running with this now.
That's right. While Microsoft pioneered the foundational science and proved the concept, China is now taking this idea for, innovative pilot projects to full-scale commercial deployment, and they're doing it at a speed that's genuinely impressive. Some might even say aggressive.
Pulling ahead, the sources say.
Yeah, the source material notes that China, specifically with this company called Hailanyun, which is sometimes referred to as HitCloud,
Hailanyun, okay.
they are described as pulling ahead of the rest of the world in syncing these AI-powered data centers. They moved from an initial pilot project down in Hailanyun province, which started around December 2022.
So fairly recently.
Very recently. And they've moved from that pilot to rapid commercial rollouts in an incredibly short time frame. It really signals a clear national imperative in China.
An imperative for what? Just more computing power?
Well, yes, but it's tied into a broader strategy. This aggressive and ambitious approach absolutely underscores China's strategic commitment to expanding its digital economy and securing its technological future. They are betting big on artificial intelligence, on cloud computing, on all sorts of digital technologies as key drivers for their future economic growth and, frankly, global competitiveness.
And to do that, you need the hardware.
You need vast amounts of computing power, what the industry calls compute capacity, and they recognize the urgent need for it, and they seem willing to invest heavily, mobilize significant resources, and move with remarkable speed to build the necessary infrastructure. The pace of deployment is really a critical factor here. Moving from that successful pilot project off the coast of Hainan in, just over a year, to now building more advanced commercial operations, for instance, off the coast of Shanghai, it showcases a distinct national strategy, a drive for rapid technological advancement and implementation.
And this Shanghai project, that sounds like the next big step.
It really does. It highlights the ambition and the scale they're aiming for now. Construction on what they're calling a wind-powered underwater data center began just this past June.
Wind-powered too.
Yes, adding another layer of sustainability. It's situated about 6 miles off the coast of Shanghai, which is significantly one of China's major AI hubs and financial centers.
And it's a serious investment.
Oh yeah, this isn't a small-scale test anymore. This project is valued at a reported $223 million US. That signifies a very serious national investment in this specific technology.
So what makes it so advanced, apart from being underwater and wind-powered?
Well, those are pretty advanced features in themselves, but it's the integration and the scale. It will be connected directly to a nearby offshore wind farm. That wind farm is projected to supply an astonishing 97% of the data center's energy needs.
Wow, 97% renewable power.
Exactly. So this commitment really solidifies its low carbon credentials. It's addressing not only the water and cooling issues we talked about, but also the significant carbon footprint associated with electricity generation for traditional data centers.
Okay, that's the power side. What about the computing side? How much power does it actually have?
The first phase of the Shanghai project, which is slated for operation quite soon, actually, in September,
Wow.
it's designed to house 198 server racks.
198 racks. How many servers is that?
Well, each rack can hold varying numbers, but they estimate between 396 to 792 AI-capable servers in total for this first phase.
AI-capable servers specifically.
Yes, geared towards demanding AI workloads. And Li Lingping, who's a spokesperson for Hailanyun, made a pretty striking claim about its capability.
What did they claim?
He stated that this computing power could provide enough capacity to complete the equivalent of training GPT 3.5, OpenAI's big language model, the foundation for ChatGPT.
Right, a massive model.
A massive model. They claim this center could train the equivalent of that model in just a single day.
One day. How long does that normally take?
Well, to fully train a model of that complexity typically requires thousands of powerful GPUs running for weeks, sometimes even months, depending on the setup. So achieving that kind of computational task in a single day and doing it sustainably with wind power, that would be a monumental achievement in terms of raw efficiency and speed.
Training something like GPT 3.5 in a single day, entirely wind-powered, operating deep underwater. I mean, that's not just a significant leap forward in terms of raw computing power. It really feels like a monumental stride in sustainable infrastructure.
It absolutely is. Now, it's important to keep perspective, right? This Shanghai center, even with 198 racks, is still quite small compared to the typical sprawling land-based hyperscale data centers.
How small?
Well, a medium-scale facility on land might have up to 3,000 standard server racks. And the real giants, the hyperscale ones run by Google or Amazon, can contain over 10,000 racks. So 198 is a start.
Okay, so it's not replacing those huge land facilities overnight.
Not yet. But the potential is in the modular approach. The idea is you can deploy multiple pods, scale it up over time. That scalability combined with the efficiency is what makes it so compelling.
And this rapid commercialization, this push by Hailanyun, it leads directly to this narrative we're hearing, right? The leapfrogging idea.
Exactly. Hailanyun has explicitly stated its aim is to leapfrog American companies in this nascent but strategically vital technological space. And Zhang Ning, who's a postdoctoral researcher at the University of California, Davis, specializing in this kind of next-gen low-carbon infrastructure.
We mentioned them earlier.
Right. Zhang Ning points out a crucial difference in approach. Hailanyun has gone from that pilot project in Hainan in late 2022 to commercial rollouts, like Shanghai, in less than 30 months. And Zhang notes this rapid commercialization is something Microsoft's Project Natick never attempted.
So Microsoft proved it, but didn't commercialize it at scale. Why not?
Well, Microsoft, after its very successful experiment, reportedly decided to sort of shelve Project Natick in terms of immediate commercial deployment. They framed it more as using it as a research platform now.
Gathering more data, refining the tech.
Exactly. Gathering further data, perhaps exploring different designs, refining the technology for the long term. This highlights a really clear divergence in strategy and priorities.
Between a corporation and a state-backed initiative, perhaps.
That could be part of it. While Microsoft meticulously validated the core concept, proved the technical feasibility with rigorous science. China, likely driven by national economic and technological ambitions, is aggressively tackling the practicalities of scaling this infrastructure for widespread commercial use right now.
Different risk appetites, maybe. Different timelines.
Could be. It reflects different approaches to innovation and market leadership. One focus may be on foundational research, long-term refinement, minimizing risk. The other focused on rapid, large-scale deployment, capturing market share, and setting standards through action. And this raises an important question, about the role of pure research versus rapid deployment and technological advancement. Both are absolutely vital, of course. But where you put the emphasis can profoundly determine who captures market leadership in emerging technologies and ultimately who sets the global standards for how they're implemented. China seems determined to be the implementer here.
Okay, so the potential benefits are huge energy savings, water savings, maybe even more reliable servers. But as with any groundbreaking technology, especially one interacting with such a vital and frankly delicate ecosystem like the ocean.
There are always trade-offs.
Exactly. The excitement of innovation has to be tempered by a hard look at the potential drawbacks and risks. Despite the clear benefits, there are indeed significant concerns remaining, particularly around the environmental impacts.
You can't just put giant sheet-generating machines in the ocean and expect zero consequences, right?
Right. For example, Microsoft researchers themselves, back with Project Natick, they did find that their pod caused some localized warming in the sea.
Ah, so there was a heat effect. How much?
Well, they qualified it pretty carefully. They said the impact was limited to a few thousandths of a degree warmer at most, and that was measured just meters downstream of the vessel.
A few thousandths of a degree. That sounds tiny, almost negligible.
On its own, maybe. But that localized warming, even if seemingly small in isolation from one pod, it really opens up a more nuanced and critical discussion, doesn't it?
Yeah, because it's probably not going to be just one pod, is it?
Exactly. While a few thousandths of a degree might not sound like much, you have to consider the potential cumulative effect. What happens if you deploy multiple, potentially much larger data centers in coastal areas? What if you have hundreds, or as China might envision, even thousands of these underwater facilities clustered together?
Each one continuously releasing heat, even if it's a small amount individually.
Right. That collective heat output could potentially start to alter local currents in a more significant way, maybe affect nutrient distribution or impact sensitive marine life over the long term. The scale and density of deployment become absolutely paramount here.
So one pod's tiny effect might become a much bigger regional effect if you scale it up massively.
Precisely. So while Microsoft's single, relatively small pod had a minimal impact, you have to imagine the long-term ripple effect if, as China apparently intends, hundreds of these modules are deployed in concentrated areas. And then you have to layer on natural phenomena, like marine heat waves. This is where it gets really interesting and potentially quite concerning.
Marine heat waves, periods when the ocean temperature gets unusually high.
Exactly. And a 2022 scientific paper issued a pretty stark warning about this interaction. They predicted that during these marine heat waves, the outlet water discharged from these undersea data centers would obviously be even warmer than usual, because the intake water is already warmer.
Okay, that makes sense. Warmer water out.
But here's the critical part. Warmer water holds less dissolved oxygen.
And oxygen is vital for marine life.
Absolutely crucial. From microscopic plankton right up the food chain to fish, corals, everything needs oxygen. So if these data centers are discharging significantly warmer, lower oxygen water during a heat wave,
That could really stress the local ecosystem.
exactly, it could potentially stress ecosystems already struggling with the broader impacts of climate change, potentially leading to localized die-offs or forcing migrations of sensitive species. It could fundamentally alter the delicate marine balance in that area.
So the impact might be minimal under normal conditions, but much worse during these extreme events, which are becoming more common with climate change.
That seems to be the concern, yeah. It highlights the immense complexity of trying to accurately assess environmental impact in these dynamic natural systems.
So what does Hailanyun, the Chinese company, say about this? Are they acknowledging these risks?
Well, Hailanyun in response to these kinds of valid concerns, maintains that its centers are environmentally friendly. They point to an assessment they conducted on one of their earlier test pods back in 2020 in China's Pearl River estuary.
Okay, what did that assessment find?
They stated that the dissipated heat from their test pod caused less than 1 degree Celsius of temperature rise in the surrounding water, and they concluded from this that it caused virtually no substantial impact.
Less than 1 degree? That sounds more significant than thousandths of a degree, but maybe still localized. How do we reconcile that with the Microsoft findings and the heat wave concerns?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? This raises an important point. How do we reconcile these different impact assessments?
The discrepancies could arise from lots of things, right? Different measurement methods, maybe different scales of operation between Microsoft's research pod and Hailanyun's commercial pilot.
Or even just the local conditions. The Pearl River estuary is a very different marine environment compared to the open ocean off Scotland where Natick was. Salinity, currents, existing temperatures.
Right, it all makes a difference. So it absolutely highlights the urgent need for independent, rigorous, third-party, long-term ecological studies as these projects start to scale up from pilots to widespread deployment.
We need more data, basically. Public data.
Exactly. Understanding how resilient the local ecosystem is to these subtle temperature changes, and especially to oxygen depletion during extreme events like heat waves. That resilience is going to be highly variable from one location to another. It's critical to ensure truly sustainable deployment. We must have robust, verifiable data, ideally publicly available, before we see widespread adoption globally.
Okay, so environmental concerns are definitely there and need more study. What about security? Putting critical infrastructure deep underwater seems like it would create some unique challenges.
Oh, absolutely. Beyond the environmental side, there are entirely new and quite unique security vulnerabilities that emerge.
Like what? Physical access is harder, which might be good, but...
True, casual physical access might be harder. But a 2024 study uncovered a rather alarming potential vulnerability. They found that undersea data centers could potentially be destroyed, or at least severely damaged, by certain specific noises or acoustic frequencies generated by underwater speaker systems.
Destroyed by sound, like in the movies.
It sounds like it, yeah. But the physics is plausible. This raises immediate and pretty profound concerns about malicious attacks using focused sound waves.
How would that even work?
Well, the study suggests that powerful, precisely tuned acoustic waves, generated perhaps by specialized underwater speaker systems, could potentially exploit the resonant frequencies of the data center's sealed structure itself.
Make it vibrate until it breaks.
Possibly. Or they could create cavitation bubbles, tiny vacuum pockets in the water that collapse violently, inducing immense pressure waves. These pressure waves could potentially compromise the structural integrity of the vessel, or maybe even damage the sensitive electronic components inside through shock waves.
Wow, that's a whole new kind of threat vector.
It really is. And imagine the difficulty of detecting such a subtle, yet potentially devastating attack in the vastness and noise of the ocean.
Very hard to spot someone deploying an underwater speaker array nearby.
Exactly. And this introduces a completely unique and challenging set of security dilemmas. Traditional physical security measures, think perimeter fences, guards, CCTV cameras, they're far less applicable and effective in a subsea environment.
You can't really put a fence around something on the seabed easily.
Not really. So instead, we're talking about these new, highly specialized threats. Furthermore, there are also the existing concerns about tampering with the crucial subsea fiber optic cables that connect these centers back to the mainland.
Those cables are already known to be vulnerable, right? Ship anchors, deliberate sabotage.
Precisely. They're already vulnerable points in our global communications network. If these underwater data centers become widespread and truly foundational to our national and international digital infrastructure, well, it raises profound implications for national security.
How do nations protect these assets?
That's the critical question. How do nations protect such vulnerable yet absolutely vital assets, especially given the complexities of monitoring and securing vast stretches of ocean floor? You're dealing with potential threats from state actors, non-state actors, maybe even sophisticated criminal groups. It's genuinely a completely new frontier for cybersecurity, for physical defense strategy, and even for international maritime law. Who is responsible if something happens in international waters?
Okay, so there are definite environmental questions needing answers and some pretty unique security worries to figure out. But despite those valid concerns, the core advantages seem really compelling, don't they? The energy efficiency, the water savings, maybe enhanced reliability.
They are compelling, yes. which is why the concept is gaining significant appeal beyond just China, even with those hurdles. This isn't just a localized experiment anymore or a two-horse race between, say, Microsoft's research and China's deployment. It feels like it's rapidly becoming a global ripple effect.
Other countries are getting interested.
Yeah, definitely. South Korea, for instance, has already announced definitive plans to pursue its own undersea data centers. They're looking to follow in the footsteps of China and learn from the Microsoft experience.
Okay, South Korea is diving in. Anyone else?
Well, other nations like Japan and Singapore are also exploring those slightly different approaches. They're considering data centers that actually float on the ocean's surface rather than full submersion deep down.
Floating data centers. How would that work? Still using seawater cooling?
Presumably, yes, they'd still leverage seawater for cooling, but maybe avoid some of the challenges of deep-sea pressure vessels and maintenance access. It's a different engineering trade-off.
So different approaches, but the same underlying idea. Use the ocean.
Exactly. This diverse range of approaches, some going for full submersion like China and South Korea, embracing the stability in deep-sea cooling, others exploring surface-level alternatives like Japan and Singapore, maybe prioritizing easier access. It indicates a broader international recognition of the critical problem.
The problem being the resource consumption and heat from traditional data centers.
Right. Everyone recognizes that problem, and they see the potential of ocean-based solutions in whatever form to create more sustainable and efficient digital infrastructure. Each approach, floating or submerged, has its own specific engineering challenges, its own environmental considerations, but collectively they signify this global shift, a rethinking of where and how we build the very backbone of our digital world.
It shows how universally felt these challenges are becoming.
It really does.
So, if the core technology basically works, as Natick showed, and the benefits are clear and global interest is definitely growing, what's holding everyone else back from diving in headfirst right now? Why aren't we seeing these pop up everywhere?
Well, that brings us back to Zhang Ning, the researcher from UC Davis. They made a really insightful point about this.
What do they say?
Zhang states that whether other coastal areas around the world will jump on this trend hinges less on technical feasibility. So, less on can we make it work? And more on how quickly would-be operators can resolve the regulatory, ecological, and supply chain questions that China is now tackling at scale.
So the science and engineering might be mostly figured out, but it's the human systems around it. Our laws, our environmental rules, our global logistics, those are the real bottlenecks now.
Exactly. That sums it up perfectly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the purely technical hurdle of getting servers to operate reliably underwater might be largely cleared thanks to pioneers like Microsoft. But the social hurdles, the governmental hurdles, the logistical ones, they're often the most complex, the slowest to overcome, and often the most resistant to rapid innovation.
Can we break those down a bit? Regulatory, ecological, supply chain. What are the big issues there?
Yeah, let's do that, because they are truly formidable challenges. First, you have the regulatory challenges, immense ones. Who actually governs the ocean, especially beyond immediate coastal waters?
Good question. Lots of different rules, I imagine.
Incredibly complex. The rules for constructing and operating massive industrial infrastructure in coastal waters, or potentially even out in international waters, they vary significantly by jurisdiction. Just obtaining the necessary permits, conducting the thorough environmental impact assessments or EIAs that would be required.
That process can take years on land already.
Exactly. And navigating the intricate web of national environmental laws, plus international maritime law, like the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, it's a huge undertaking. Each nation will have its own unique set of regulations, and frankly, most of them were simply not designed with something as novel and unprecedented as an underwater server farm in mind. Creating new legal precedents and frameworks for this new frontier will be a slow, painstaking process.
Okay, so regulation is hurdle number one. What about ecology?
Right. The ecological questions remain profound, as we discussed. We've touched on the potential impacts like heat and oxygen, but the long-term effects on marine life, on local biodiversity, on sensitive protected areas nearby. These are still largely unknown for widespread, large-scale deployment.
We need those long-term studies.
Desperately. Independent, robust scientific studies over extended periods are absolutely crucial to understand the full ecological picture. And it's not just heat. What about potential electromagnetic interference from the power cables or servers? What about the acoustic footprint, the noise during construction, operation, and maintenance? These things matter to marine life, too.
And public acceptance is key, too, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Gaining public trust and acceptance for such projects requires rigorous scientific validation, transparent reporting of findings, and continuous independent monitoring. Coastal communities, indigenous groups who may have rights or interests in those waters, environmental organizations. They will, quite rightly, demand solid assurance that these projects won't irrevocably harm their local marine ecosystems, their fishing grounds, or maybe even cultural heritage sites on the seabed.
A high bar to clear. And the third hurdle was supply chain.
Yes, the supply chain issues. These are significant. We're talking about highly specialized manufacturing, deployment, maintenance, and eventually retrieval of these unique sealed units. This isn't off-the-shelf technology you can just order.
You can't just buy an underwater data center pod on Amazon.
Not quite. Developing a robust global supply chain for building the high-pressure vessels, manufacturing the specialized subsea power and data cabling, acquiring or commissioning the heavy lift ships needed for installation, designing custom subsea robotics for maintenance, because humans aren't going down there regularly.
Right, robots would have to do repairs.
Most likely for many tasks. And then ensuring the complex logistics of connecting these modules to the power grid and the internet backbone. It all requires massive investment, highly specialized expertise, and probably unprecedented international collaboration on standards and components.
And that specialization probably means high costs and potential bottlenecks.
Exactly. The costs associated with this specialization are considerable, and the potential for bottlenecks in manufacturing or deployment is very real, especially if demand suddenly ramps up globally. This is where China's current experience tackling these very challenges at scale right now will provide invaluable lessons, both successes and failures, for other nations considering this path. It will help them navigate these complex and often uncharted waters, literally and figuratively.
Okay, so a lot to figure out beyond just the tech. So why should you, our listener, care about data centers being dunked in the ocean? It's kind of niche, maybe.
Well, I'd argue it's not niche at all, actually. This technology, or at least the problem it's trying to solve, directly impacts the sustainability of every single digital tool you use every single day.
Like my streaming, my cloud photos.
Exactly. From the AI models generating content or answering your questions, to your favorite streaming services delivering movies, to the cloud storage holding your most precious photos and documents. It all relies on data centers, and making them more sustainable matters. This underwater concept is a fascinating, tangible example of how global innovation is addressing very real, very tangible problems. The energy and water crisis linked to our digital lives problems that affect everyone, even if the infrastructure itself is hidden deep beneath the waves or tucked away inside a server farm in some remote desert.
And the relevance and application here seem immense, thinking longer term.
How might this influence where future tech companies choose to build their infrastructure if coastal cold water locations become prime real estate for data centers? Right. What does that mean for coastal communities? For fishing industries? For shipping lanes if there are large underwater installations? For the delicate balance of marine ecosystems in those areas? Or even for global technological competition, as we see with China trying to leapfrog.
This isn't just about servers, is it? It's really about the future of our digital world and our physical world intertwining in ways we are only just beginning to comprehend. Hashtag tag outro. So what does this all mean for us? We've journeyed from the immense, kind of invisible energy and water demands of our increasingly digital lives demands, supercharged by AI and cloud computing, to this truly ingenious, maybe slightly audacious underwater solution.
From the problem to a potential deep-sea answer.
Exactly. We've seen China's aggressive leadership in commercializing this technology, building rapidly upon the really pioneering research done by companies like Microsoft. But as we've discussed, with any groundbreaking technology, especially one that interacts so directly with our planet's vital ecosystem.
Your how is just the beginning.
Right. The how is just one part of the story. The what next, the scaling, the regulation, the long-term impacts, and maybe most importantly, at what cost? Environmentally, economically, securely, those questions are just as, if not more, important.
Yeah. And they demand robust, transparent, and probably globally collaborative answers. We can't just have one country forging ahead without considering the wider implications.
Absolutely.
And this raises, I think, a really important question that we as a society really need to actively engage with as this progresses. As we navigate these exciting but definitely challenging waters of technological progress, how do we ensure that our solutions, like underwater data centers, truly lead to a more sustainable future overall? How do we make sure we're not just, shifting environmental burdens from freshwater consumption on land to thermal pollution or ecosystem disruption in the ocean?
Trading one problem for another.
Potentially. What are the trade-offs we are genuinely willing to accept in our pursuit of ever greater computing power and digital convenience? And critically, how do we ensure transparency and accountability in assessing those trade-offs and mitigating the risks? The choices being made today, as this technology ramps up, they will echo for generations.
That's a powerful question to leave with you, our listener. Consider the vast, largely unexplored depths of our oceans. Are they merely a convenient resource, a giant heat sink for cooling our increasingly demanding machines? An engineering marvel to be exploited?
Or is there another way to look at it?
Or do they perhaps represent a new frontier, a chance for a genuinely symbiotic relationship between humanity's ever-expanding digital needs and the planet's ecological balance? Can we do this right?
That's the hope, isn't it?
How will future generations judge the choices we make today about leveraging these natural wonders for our digital future? What responsibility do we all bear, technologists, policymakers, consumers, in ensuring that this deep dive into the ocean's potential is truly a sustainable one that's respectful of the very environment it seeks to harness?
A lot to think about there.
It's definitely a question worth pondering as you navigate your own digital world today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's given you plenty to think about.